the first YouTube video I put up, which is quite a few years old now, but it's still worth having a look at. It's called Golf Performance Mantra. It's about taking the game one breath at a time, one shot at a time, one hole at a time. And I know we live in the age of sound bites. It's not meant to be an off-the-cuff thing. If there's practice, deep practice behind it, it actually works. This breath, this shot, this hole. And staying in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. Breath, body, awareness, connecting on the inside. And then it allows your movement to flow.
Golf Smarter, number 762. The quieter your mind, the more fluid your movement. With Jayne Storey, author of Breathe Golf.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome to the Golf Smarter podcast, Jayne.
Hello, Fred. It's lovely to be speaking with you, and thanks for inviting me onto your show.
Well, it was motivated by an email that I received from a listener, because I always encourage listeners for suggestions. And I got a suggestion from Thomas Cotter out of New York, who said, I just read a good book by Jayne Storey called Breathe Golf, The Missing Link, Winning Performance. Her website is cheap-performance. Thought it might be a good guest for the podcast. I really think that a quiet mind is perfect before your shot. Love your podcast. Thank you, Thomas. Appreciate that. So he had wonderful things to say about your book, Breathe Golf.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, it's, in a nutshell, what your listeners said is quite true. The book is all about how to quieten the mind. And to put it very simply, the quieter the mind, the more fluid the movement. So that applies to any athlete or performer, but obviously in this case we're talking about golf and the golf swing. So the quieter the mind, the more fluid the movement. And this is something that Tai Chi masters and Zen masters have known for hundreds and maybe thousands of years. And in fact, in Tai Chi, we have a saying that stillness is the master of motion. And over the last 30 odd years, neuroscientists seem to have caught on to this. And all the research and all the tests that they've done on athletes, and we're talking about athletes on a world-class level, an Olympic standard, all the research from the neuroscientists proves that the athlete with the quietest mind in the moments before they start moving is always the one who's going to deliver the best movement, the most fluid shot, the most connected movement. So, yeah, I think your listener did read the book.
It's interesting you said connected movement. Let's play off on that a bit.
Oh, right. Well, you're going to have me back next year because I'm actually writing my second book now, which is called Connected Golf. And that was not a setup. I haven't paid you to ask me these questions. But yeah, it's called Connected Golf, and it's the subtitle is Bridging the Gap Between Practice and Performance. Perfect. So my sort of expertise or my background, there are two pillars of it. One is Zazen, which is traditional formal Buddhist meditation, and that's the basis for the research of Breathe Golf. But the other side is Tai Chi. I've been practicing Tai Chi and teaching it for over 30 years. So the new book, Connected Golf, is all about fundamental movement principles, many of which golfers already know from other sports and also the martial arts. I know I'm giving long answers to your questions, but connected movement is very interesting. And In fact, somebody emailed me quite recently to say, I've read your book and I've been doing the meditation practice, and my game is more connected. So it's really interesting that people actually use that word or that term to describe their game. But the crux of this is that, from my research and the way that I approach golf and sport, the crux of it is, Fred, that if a golfer is connected on the inside, i.e. if their mind and their body communicate with each other, if their mind and body are connected, if the golfer's connected on the inside, then their movement is connected. If the golfer is disconnected on the inside, which usually happens when people think too much, try too hard, fiddle about with their technique and tweak their swing in the middle of a round, when the golfer's disconnected, the movement's disconnected. And that doesn't matter how much somebody knows about the golf swing. It makes no difference. If the mind and the body are not somehow connected in the moments before the golfer takes the club away, then the movement can't be connected.
How do you connect?
How do you connect? Good question. I'm glad you asked me, Fred. Well, it's quite difficult to connect. It takes training, what I would call deep practice, which is the work that's outlined in Breathe Golf. So mostly the way that I help my students to learn to be connected is to focus on their breathing, particularly deep abdominal breathing down into the Dantian or the Hara center, which is the body's center of gravity. So the breath is very, very important, but also the sensation to the physical body, being aware of the body, aware of the breath, aware of your posture, aware of your feet on the ground underneath you. You see, there's this fundamental dichotomy in golf and sports performance, which I don't feel that the conventional approach really it doesn't understand it, and it doesn't address it. So the mind and the body are separate in us most of the time. I would suggest that we mostly live in the mind. The mind is what leads us through our lives, and we tend to sort of drag the body around as an afterthought. And the role of the mind and the body are different as well. So the role of the mind is to analyze, compartmentalize, process, understand, order information. And the trouble comes when we think the mind can organize movement, and it can't. It's not the job of the mind to organize movement. It's the job of the body to move. So the body is designed to breathe, to move us through time and space, to move us through our lives. But the rhythms, the tempos, the qualities, the energies in the mind and the body are completely different. So if your listeners are standing over the ball and they're thinking about how they're going to move, they're straight away they're in the mind, thinking about movement, and they're not connecting the mind to the body. That the mind is kind of going on ahead. I mean, this gets quite deep and philosophical, but also if you think about the technique, think about the swing or the shot that you're about to take, you're already coming away from the present moment. You're projecting into the future, and you're thinking in terms of instruction. Now this captures the signal about your intention, and instead of it going to the motor system, which is what's responsible for allowing the body to move with freedom and fluidity, the signal gets caught by the prefrontal cortex or by the analytical brain. And so there are issues of timing, rhythm, flow, and we see this in the professionals games as much as in the committed amateur. Too much thinking, too much trying, and not enough connection to the here and now.
We talk about this a lot on Golf Smarter and have since the very beginning on the mind-body connection. I've got some more questions for you about that connection, and we're going to do that right after this brief message. Right back. Let's talk about the Radio Baseball Cards podcast, because we're coming up to the final episodes of the season. And this week, we hear from a player that even though he may be associated with one team throughout his career, as he comes to the end of playing, we learn how Ron Cey grew to appreciate and love baseball over his entire life. Here's your host, the late Hall of Famer, Don Drysdale.
Here's another Radio Baseball Card. Ron Cey feels fortunate to be playing in the big league since 1972, but he's seen the dangers of complacency.
You have to have that little boy running around inside of you to keep the spark, keep the enthusiasm and love. But,
that's the Radio Baseball Cards podcast. Short stories as told by the greatest baseball players of the 20th century. Radio Baseball Cards is free and available wherever you subscribe to your favorite podcasts. Jayne, there are many times when I am getting ready for my next golf shot, where I will stand behind the ball, I will take my practice swings, I will think about the things that I want to deliver in this golf shot. And then I step up to the ball and hopefully my mind is clear and I just execute. But I recognize many times that I'm still thinking about a couple of those movements. And as you were just talking about, that creates a problem. And it does, because I don't always get the results that I was intending. So how is it that before I step up the ball, I can get all the information I need in my head and then let it go and just step up and execute?
Well, it's a really good question, and it's one that I've been asked, many, many times. And I've also seen it with the students that I work with. It's a very common phenomena in golf. So you'll do a couple of practice swings, and during those practice swings, your swing is nice and fluid, languid, it's kind of easy. There are no problems there at all. And a moment or two later, when you step up to the ball for real to take the shot, everything goes wrong. Things can go wrong. People lose their balance. They rush. They shorten the backswing. They top the ball. They don't follow through properly. All of these things. Now, the mainstream will go, oh, well, it's got to be something to do with Fred's technique. He's missing this vital component of swing technique and swing mechanics, and let's have him back and do a load more lessons on his swing. Now, I dispute this, even though, it won't make me popular with swing professionals. But, everybody needs to learn the basics of technique, but they also need to learn this other stuff alongside. So it'd be a very good marriage to have an understanding of technique, but also to have an understanding, a clear understanding of how to deliver that technique in play and how to deliver that technique when you're under pressure. So what's happening in those few moments when the golfer has stepped away, they've done 1 practice swing, 2 practice swings, nothing's wrong, everything's fine, step up to the ball, terrible shot. So I would ask everybody who's listening to reflect on that phenomena in their own game and try to observe yourself and what's happening. Because what's happening is all about this connection or disconnection inside, which comes down to several things, but for simplicity's sake, let's say that it comes down to your breathing. So in your practice swings, there's no pressure. You have all the time that you need. You're breathing probably, in a very calm, very relaxed way, and your body can flow and everything's hunky-dory. Then, a moment later, you have to take the shot. And chances are that because you now feel some kind of anxiety, you are either holding your breath or your breath has come right up into the chest, the upper part of the chest, so that you're shallow breathing, which creates this whole a cycle that's detrimental to the whole biochemistry, the brain chemistry, the biomechanics. When we shallow breathe, the heart rate goes up, the muscles shorten and tighten, there's less oxygen to the brain, the fine motor skills don't work so well, all of these things. So it's what's happened to the golfer on the inside, i.e. holding the breath, not breathing deeply, these very subtle, almost micro changes in the biochemistry that then result in I'm rushing, I've topped the ball, I didn't follow through properly, and what we would say externally is the breakdown of technique. But it's all because of the breakdown of the sort of equilibrium, the silence, the quality of silence and stillness within the golfer that's broken down.
It's interesting because there are so many distractions on each shot. And that also includes, especially if you have a regular group of people that you play with. You're not in competition. This is friendly, but still you want to perform your best. And you have somebody's got a speaker going with music, whether it's in your group or the next group or the group, in front of you or behind you, you hear music going where you don't necessarily want that at the moment. Or there's conversation going on and all of a sudden you've got a break for your shot, right? How do you detach yourself from those distractions to get into your safe space, if we can call it that, to get your pre-shot routine, your breathing, your movement, and your mind clear?
Well, the thing is, Fred, that I'm advocating the practice of formal meditation, traditional meditation, not using an app and not doing, mindfulness, which I think is a much more simplified and perhaps a watered down version of more formal training. So I ask my students, and it's also a big component of Breathe Golf, is if you can discipline yourself enough to sit quietly at home for, say, 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week, just following the breath, relaxing into the body, allowing the breath to become deeper, you will experience this symbiotic relationship between mind, breath, and the physical body. When we breathe nice and deeply, the body is more relaxed and the mind is clearer, it's freer of thoughts. So we practice this for the very reasons that you're bringing to this interview, those very reasons, which again are common questions that I've been asked. If you do your practice at home and you have the dedication and the discipline, which many people do, and they're finding it is helpful in so many ways, not just golf, but especially the conditions in the world at the moment, which we're all aware of. The ability to focus on your breathing and stay focused on your own body, being present in your body, is priceless. It is priceless. And if you can make effort towards that day by day, week by week, when you're on the golf course and your mates they've got their music on, or somebody's telling you that you're gripping the putter wrong or whatever it is, you just do your training. You say, oh yes, oh really, that's very interesting, or whatever. But you don't have to come away from your practice. I mean, for instance, now as I'm speaking to you, I'm trying very much to be aware of my breathing. I'm aware of my body. I can feel my hands together in my lap. I can feel my feet on the ground. And I'm aware of myself in the room. And we can all be practicing, being present, being where we are. We can practice it all the time. So all those distractions that you're talking about, they're just a good source of training. What's really interesting, Fred, is one of the things that started me off on this path around the turn of the millennium was when I discovered that the flow state, or the zone, which people speak about in golf and other sports, there's a direct parallel between the flow state, or the zone, and the meditative state, which is what we approach when we practice awareness of breathing and meditation. And there are two really interesting factors that occur in both the zone and the meditative state. And they are, one, that you stop talking to yourself about your performance. So all that self-reflective stuff is just not there. You stop talking to yourself about, am I doing well? Am I doing badly? What's the score? How many more birdies do I need? What if I mess up on the next tee? That's all by the by. It goes into the background. The mind becomes a lot quieter. And the other thing that happens, the other kind of symptom, if you like, of the zone and the meditative state, is that you stop talking about external distractions. So that could be the weather, other people, anything that is sort of beyond, outside of oneself. You stop talking to yourself about that as well. So, I like your term, the safe space. Other people, I think, call it a bubble or your cocoon or whatever, but it's touching on the meditative state, which is, it's a very special experience.
Jayne, I can see why you would be an amazing instructor, because your delivery, your voice, the amount of calm that you're bringing to this conversation is palpable and really pleasant. I'm really, really enjoying this. I want to talk more about breathing, and I'm going to do that with you after this moment. Jayne, I recently got a Apple Watch for my birthday. And one of the things that it does is tells me to breathe. It stops me during the day and tell me to, and it gives me prompts on how to take in the breath and let out the breath just by its vibration. And I'm enjoying it. I'm not dismissing it, and I'm using it. And strangely enough, I was watching the first of the presidential debates here in the United States a couple weeks ago in 2020 debates. And my stomach I was getting very tense. I was getting really tense, and I was yelling at the TV, and all of a sudden my watch said, breathe. I was like, thank you. I needed that. But I find myself on the golf course in my pre-shot routine, when I'm completed with it and I'm about to tip up the ball, is that I do take a large releasing breath. I will just close my eyes and let out this breath. But then I can't tell you what happens after that. If I have a slow, intentional breath, or if I have a shallow breath, I'm trying to get there, but I don't know if I do.
Well, I'm not a big fan of apps and devices. I'm very old-fashioned. I really am. I'm very old-fashioned.
As you speak on this podcast.
Pardon?
As you speak on this podcast.
I know I'm on the podcast, but, I know. It's you have to make allowances to sort of get the message out. But as one of my students said to me, apps and, the smartwatches and all these things, they're like a 21st century approach to an ancient practice.
Yes. And
there's nothing, you can't beat effort and work. You can't beat it. If you want to get fit, you can't pay somebody to do your press-ups for you. If you put the effort in, you get the rewards. And it seems like such a simple thing, breathing. And it's so funny because on Amazon, I've got 71 reviews for my book, Breathe Golf. And I think about 67, 68 of them are, this is amazing, it's changed my game. And there's 2 or 3 people who say it wastes of time, rubbish. And it's so interesting that there's such a polarity. People love it, or they think it's an absolute load of old twaddle. And that's because it's like, well, it's too easy. It can't be that easy. It can't just be about breathing. And therefore we tend to think, well, I know that already, or we dismiss it out of hand. But the example that you're bringing about taking a deep breath, I would suggest that without learning how to breathe properly, or without doing the meditation practice, which it kind of allows the body to breathe in a better way, because we can't force it. But if you try to take a deep breath, so we go like this to take a deep breath, it goes straight into the wrong part of the body. It goes into the upper chest. And now I feel a bit lightheaded from doing that. That's the deep breath. And the chest expands and the shoulders rise. And it's not the way to take a deep breath. So in Zazen, and I'd love if people are really interested in meditation itself, I would recommend Zen Master Shunryo Suzuki's book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. He was a Japanese Zen priest, a Zen master who set up the Zen Center in San Francisco, and there's a couple of other places too. But he talks a lot about the posture and the breath being down in the Hara Center. And in Tai Chi, we would call the Hara Center the Dantian. And I don't know if you can hear the difference in my voice as I focus down on the Hara Center or the Dantian. The breath is much deeper, the shoulders relax, the chest is empty. And in terms of movement, now I can move my upper body more freely, I can rotate more, I'm not trapped in the upper body. I'm not hindering the movement of my upper body. Whereas if I shallow breathe, can you hear immediately what happens to my voice? It's
Went up.
completely different. Different. So give it a try, just give it a try. See what happens if you sit quietly for 10 or 15 minutes and follow the breathing.
Actually, the Zen Center that you spoke of, so the book is Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind?
Yes, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. It's written back in the 70s, I think. It's a very famous book.
Yeah. The Zen Center is here in Marin County where I live, not far from where I live at all.
Well, you should have interviewed me there, shouldn't you, Fred?
Yes. And are you familiar with Sylvia Borstein?
Yes. Sorry?
Are you familiar with Sylvia Borstein as well at the Zen Center?
Possibly.
Yeah, she's a member of our community. Anyway, okay, let's get back to golf here. And you talk about, on your website, you talk about the ability to breathe more efficiently.
Yeah.
Is this what we're talking about?
Well, I guess, but it's not something that you can do. You can't do it. You have to allow it. And, this is the thing that the breath is given to us. It's given to us. It's our life, and it's our fundamental activity. It's what we all come down to, is our breathing. And we can't force it. I get a lot of questions from people who've read the book and say, well, my golf's not so great. I've been trying to do this. I've been trying to breathe. And I always advise them, well, you're possibly just thinking about your breathing. Now you've added thinking about breathing to the whole list of swing thoughts. And this is again why I advocate the practice, the formal practice, because then you feel, this is what it's like to be relaxed. This is what it feels like to quieten my mind. Oh, right, if I sit here and I just allow my breathing to take care of itself, I feel, my body softens, my breath is deeper, my mind is quiet. And, I'm not saying that it's easy, because it isn't easy. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And, it does take a special kind of effort. But it's worth it, not just for golf, but for so many other things. I mean, let me give you an example. There's the father of a young golfer contacted me to help his son, who was suffering terribly with nerves and anxiety whenever he was in competition. And this young fella, he had a fantastic swing, really pleasant, really amiable, good-looking young man with lots of talent. But nobody could help him because he was just falling apart under pressure. And, I'm not saying this to blow my own trumpet. It's only my background and experience. I'm not a golfer. I'm not a golf coach. I'm a martial arts instructor and a meditation teacher. But the boy came along with his father to a lesson. He got him to show me his swing on the driving range. And within a few moments, I noticed that he wasn't balanced properly and he was holding his breath. So no amount of coaching on the swing or the mental game would have been of any use to this boy. We could have another conversation another time, if you like, about the Tai Chi principles and fundamental movement principles. And there is a place where I advocate people balance on the foot. You can find, I've put a YouTube video up about it actually, if people want to find it. I think it's called Tai Chi Footwork for Effortless Golf. But So I helped this young fella balance properly and breathe properly. And, it changed everything for him. Simple fix. But, he had to practice.
I will definitely put the Tai Chi footwork for effortless golf. I'll find that video and I'll put it on the blog post for this episode today.
I've got so many. Sorry to interrupt. I've got so many free reports. If people want to contact me, I answer everybody, even if it takes a few days or whatever to get back to people. But I've got 2 training reports. I've got one on my website at the moment. And it's called Staying Centered in a Changing World. So it's all about the practice of meditation for life, health, strengthening the immune system, but also for your sport. But I've got another one called Relaxed Power, which is all about standing meditation, which is integral to, or integral, as Americans say, integral to all the martial arts systems of the world. Standing meditation, which teaches you how to balance and relax the upper body. So if anybody wants that, just send me a message.
Absolutely. Send it to me. I can forward it to you too. And I'm really glad that you brought up the idea of performing under pressure, because I want to ask you something specific. I'm going to do that after this break. Thank you so much for subscribing to the Golf Smarter podcast. Today's conversation with Jayne brings our total to 762 episodes of game improvement and golf lifestyle in our library. Unfortunately, that means that more than half of our valuable lessons are nowhere to be found on any podcast app. That's why we've introduced Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insights from the best instructors featured on Golf Smarter. This week is a perfect example of why these past episodes are so valuable. From March 2009, we have a chance to hear again from Glen Coombe, the putting doctor. Glen is retired since we first published this episode, but his tips and advice are no less relevant.
How about your own personal stimp meter? Find a level area on the putting surface. Using the balls that you play with, not a range ball, let's putt 3 balls. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep our backstroke within our stance. We're kind of looking for, I'm guessing, a 8 to 10 foot putt pace. Putt 3 in a row and then walk them off. Once you get used to that length of stroke on a flat surface, and you know what distance that generates on an average green, or say your home course green. If you use that technique and find your ball coming shorter than normal or longer than normal, there's your stimp reading for today.
That's episode 78 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, featuring the putting doctor, Glen Coombe, being released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe, and when you do, you'll receive brand new episodes of each automatically when they become available. Jayne, I have never been one to play competitively. I play for fun. I play for enjoyment. I play to be outside with my friends. And I'm always competing against myself. But when it comes to competing with others, I just tell me the score afterwards and what I owe you, and we'll deal with it then. I don't want to be reminded all during the round what my scorecard says or how many strokes you're in front of me. And today, as soon as we're done with this recording, I'm going out to play with one of my closest playing partners and closest friends. And we're very evenly matched, and we easily get in each other's head too. And he suggested that we're going to play today, tomorrow, take a day off, and then play again on Sunday, on the weekend. So 3 rounds in 4 days. And I'm already feeling anxious about this because it's a competition. He set up rules of what we're competing and what the payoff is at the end. and I'm already getting anxious about this. This is not something I'm ever comfortable with. I need your help right now.
Yeah, a lot of people are the same, and for people who play competitively in golf and other sports, that anxiety you mentioned, it can begin sort of 3 weeks before a tournament. If I share a little story with you, it might help to illustrate my answer. And as I said, I've been practicing Tai Chi and formal meditation for about 30 years. So you'd think that I was pretty good at it. But I have a teacher, I have a couple of teachers actually, who are in their 80s, and they've practiced for twice as long as I have. So whenever I'm with these people, I think, oh God, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't what do I know? What do I know? So one of my teachers, this wonderful woman in her mid-80s, very casually asked me on the phone, because we were going to do a retreat at her house for a day, myself and some other people who practice meditation, not my students, just another group. So she asked me on the phone very casually, oh, Jayne, would you show us some of your Tai Chi tomorrow? And Fred, when I do Tai Chi with my students, I'm an expert, you know. When I do Tai Chi outside my apartment here, I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing. But the thought of doing it, teaching it, no less, in front of my teacher, my meditation teacher, I thought, oh my God, I can't do that, you know. And I started to be really nervous. I thought, oh, she's going to be eyeballing me, you know, she's going to be really scrutinizing me, and what am I going to say, and what principles am I going to bring, and how am I going to start, and, you know. And I realized in that moment, the only way to prepare for that, which was going to be the following day, the only way to prepare for that moment, when she'd say, oh, and now Jayne's going to show us her Tai Chi. The only way I could prepare for that moment, Fred, was to try to be in the moment I was in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way. And I'm writing another product for, I'm writing an audio and ebook at the moment, which I hope to have ready before Christmas. And it's all about mastering pressure. And it's about this very thing. This is why I am stressing the practice of formal meditation. So not, oh, my beeper's gone on my phone or my watch, I'm going to take a deep breath, you know, which is actually a shallow breath. Not that, but something more disciplined. I'm going to sit quietly for 10 or 15 minutes, switch off all my devices, and just be. And if we train ourselves for that, then we have a chance of being where we are. So the only way that you can prepare yourself for the competition and the tournament tomorrow, or the next day or next week, is to learn to be in the moment that you're in. Try to stay there. And the way we can stay there, which is back to connection, the way we can stay with ourselves is to be in the breath that we're taking. This breath, and try to stay with the body, the sensation of the physical body. And the first YouTube video I put up, which is quite a few years old now, but it's still worth having a look at, it's called Golf Performance Mantra. And it's about taking the game one breath at a time, one shot at a time, one hole at a time. And I know we live in the age of sound bites. It's not meant to be an off-the-cuff thing. If there's practice, deep practice behind it, it actually works. This shot, this breath, this shot, this hole, and staying in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. Breath, body, awareness, connecting on the inside, and then it allows your movement to flow.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's phenomenal advice. Do you do personal lessons and consultations with people all over the world?
I do.
How can our listeners get in touch with you?
I do. Well, I've got two websites. I've got a personal one, which is JayneStorey.com. I'm sure you'll put a link, won't you, Fred?
I will, and it's JayneStorey.
That's right, JayneStorey.com, and there's also chi-performance.com. So chi is the Chinese word for breath or energy. Contact me through there, or find me. There's my mobile number. You can find me on WhatsApp and whiz me a message. I do a lot of one-to-one now on Zoom and Skype with people all around the world. I think it's about 23 different countries at the moment I've got students in, and readers and people that have given me feedback from the book. The online lessons work very well. I've got video and audio and written material to sort of follow up the lessons. And I'm very interested in the people that I work with. I'm not a one-size-fits-all instructor. Everything is bespoke. And I always speak to people, get a good sense of them, and make sure we're a good fit by doing a half-hour informal phone call before we think about working together.
And the name of the book again is Breathe, period. Golf.
Yes, it's Breathe Golf, the missing link to a winning performance.
And it's available on Amazon?
It is available Kindle format, Audible, and paperback on Amazon.
Excellent. And I will put links to those on the blog from today's conversation as well at golfsmarter.com.
Thank you.
Jayne, it was really enlightening and wonderful to speak with you. Thank you for calming me down about my performance this afternoon, but also just for calming me down. It's very peaceful speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
That's very touching, Fred. Thank you.
Okay, so I need to update you on my 3-round competition with Neil that we just discussed with Jayne, and she was really helpful. So the night before we started, I sat down and watched the Tony Manzoni video again, and something finally clicked with me on the downswing, which I was really excited to incorporate into my swing the next day. But the next morning, I had to leave for the first course of our play immediately after recording this conversation with Jayne. So on the drive there and all during the round, I kept repeating to myself, 1 breath, 1 shot, 1 hole. 1 breath all day long, all through the round. 1 breath, 1 shot, 1 hole. To keep my focus on what's next, not what I did wrong on the last hole. Here we go. Round 1. We played Metropolitan Golf Course in Oakland, just under an hour drive for me. And if you've ever been to the Oakland airport, then you've passed Metropolitan on your left just as you were driving up to the airport. I hadn't played there in a decade, and Neil had never played there. It's a link-style course, and because it's right next to the airport off the bay, it could be very windy. Well, between Jayne's inspirational conversation and Manzoni's Lost Fundamental video, I shot right out of the gates with even par on the front 9 with 1 birdie and 1 bogey. Ended up shooting 77. Well, Neil shot 89. Now, each round was worth 5 points, 2 for total score, 2 for fewest putts, and 1 for match play. I don't know where Neil came up with that, but I agreed to the rules. Okay, fine. 1 round completed. I'm now up 5-0. Round 2, Eagle Vines in Napa County. If you ever go to Golf Smarter TV, actually just before COVID hit, Neil and I did a video from Eagle Vines. Now, it's a difficult course for me to score well. Even though my average overall score over the last 20 rounds is around 83, at Eagle Vines I average 89. But even though I was up on strokes and putts by 1 each, after the 9 holes, things went south very fast in the back 9. Neil shot 89 again, but this time I shot a 97. Probably my highest score in a couple of years. I went looking back. I couldn't find a 97. I found 195, but I couldn't find a 97. So going into our final round after a day off, we were tied 5-5. As you heard me talk about many times, I usually just compete against myself and shy away from these kind of competitions. So I was pretty anxious going into Sunday. I didn't even get a lot of restful sleep the night before. So we go back to our favorite course, Rooster Run in Petaluma. And after 9 holes, Neil is up by 2 in all 3 categories. But I catch fire going even par from holes 10 to 16. Final scoring, match play, Neil wins 6-5 for 1 point. Putting, I win 35 to 36, 2 points. Stroke play, we tied 83-83, 1 point each. Final totals of the 3 rounds, I win 8-7. And now Neil has to, I get to pick the next course we get to play, and Neil has to pay for it. But it has to be under $150. We agreed to that. So no Pebble Beach, maybe Harding Park is where we might play because we don't live in San Francisco. So that's probably what it's going to cost. He really wants to do more of this, but I was so anxious that final day, including my hands were shaking. When we got to the first green, I'm on 2, I'm putting for birdie. My hands were shaking so much that I was short by probably 3.5 feet on a 10-foot putt. So I'm not as motivated to keep pushing, but we will. I'm sure we will. If you've not checked, thank you for bearing with me on that. If you've not checked out last week's episode, you'll definitely want to hear about the directed force putter from Lab Golf in my conversation with CEO Sam Hahn. That's because our next giveaway is going to be their DF 2.1 fit to your specs. Now, someone in our foursome last week referred to it as the Starship Enterprise from Star Trek. Can't argue much with that one. I kind of love the name. But it amazes me how light the putter is and what a difference the lack of torque can do for your stroke. So I want you to win one of these. I want you to check it out. Go to golfsmarter.com right now to register to win. Just click on the Enter Now banner at the top of the page at golfsmarter.com. Deadline to enter is this coming Sunday, October 18, 2020. Midnight Pacific time, 3 a.m. Eastern. Hopefully by now you know the drill. And we're going to announce the winner of that putter in our next episode. And our next episode, if all goes according to our plan tomorrow, I'm recording another conversation with someone in the UK. And when you hear this conversation, you'll know that could be our next prize. You'll figure it out. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions like the one we got today from Thomas Cotter for products or guests, just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.